Welcome to the Summer Student Challenge. Are you offsite ready? My name is Caitriona Jordan and I'm an architect and lecturer in architectural technology at the City of Glasgow College. I'm also involved in the Offsite Ready project. Some of my roles have been carrying out mapping qualification exercise, preparing and organising the training sessions for utilising the content. Today I'm going to talk to you about design considerations for any project, but specifically the student challenge. So what's important is when a client comes to you with a site is to think about site analysis. This is the backbone and the beginning of any project in terms of design considerations. First of all, you want to look at this location. So in this particular situation, you might not be able to visit the site. If you can, that would be excellent. But if you can't, don't worry. There's enough information on the laptops or on the internet to help you. So firstly looking at location, access to the site, the current context of the site. So what surrounds the site? Car parks, road access, transport links. Is there nearby bus stations, train stations? Is there cycle routes? We want to promote green travel. So how do people access the site? What surrounds the site as well? Accessibility. So is there provisions for disabled access, or is that something that you need to consider? Also, you want to think about circulation. So how do people come into the site? How do they flow around the site? And how do they leave the site? What is the surrounding areas? So thinking about vegetation. What's the landscape like? Is there trees? Do these trees have tree preservation orders on them? So finding out as much information as you can about the site. Also, where are the best views from the site? And that will help form your design and building orientation. Is there any existing buildings surrounding the area? Is the site in a conservation area? Is the site in a historical area? Is there any listed buildings in the area? So these are things that you can research on the internet and find out about. Also, you want to think about the site levels. Is the site on a hill? Is it on a fairly flat site? What's the drainage work surrounding the site? Is there any potential problems? So site analysis is about identifying constraints, identifying the positives of the site, and identifying any issues that the site may have. Is the site in an exposed area? Is it well shaded? Is there a lot of trees? How will that affect your design decisions? Again, thinking about the history of the site, if it is near a listed building or in a conservation area, that's going to have more emphasis on your design considerations. And then finally, my favourite part is the sun path diagram. So thinking about the sun path, where the sun rises and where it sets, and how are you capturing that south-facing sun? We live in Scotland. We want to capture as much south-facing sun as possible. And how are you going to capture that in your design decisions? So here's an example of a project for a visitor centre in the city centre of Glasgow. And this is an example of the site analysis that is produced from carrying out all that investigation. So person has identified areas, potential areas maybe with some issues, and also positive areas. So green denoted areas, the areas are large amounts of stones, so that could be an issue. Also, this learner has also included the sun path diagram, so where the sun rises and where the sun sets. So here is where the sun is the strongest, hottest point of the day, or the highest point of the day on the longest day of the year and the shortest day of the year. So please include that in your site analysis. Then go on to looking at the wider context of the site and identifying positives and negatives of the site. Some site photographs. You'll be issued, I think, with some site photographs. If you can access the site, that would be fantastic, but don't worry if you can't. And then the environmental impact of the surrounding areas. So you want to think about climate, and also you can think about, is there any potential developments for the site? So focusing a little bit more on our site, you've got various areas already identified, which you then need to go and look further into. So this is the full site boundary of the whole site, which the client owns, but you're developing in the visitor centre car park area here. So you need to, you'll be able to access Digimaps, or you're provided with Digimaps, where you can look at the surrounding area in a bit more context. Once you've carried out your site analysis and you've gathered all that information, you then want to put it to use and to think about the materials for the building, to think about inspiration, precedent studies. So my advice would be look at visitor centres throughout Scotland and also look at materials that are used throughout Scotland, and particular in the Edinburgh area. You want to think about local materials, so locally sourcing materials, but we also want to emphasise off-site construction and sustainability. So if you look at this Robert Burns Centre in Ayrshire, which was designed by architects Simpson and Brown, who focus on conservation architecture. So you can see that the materials, they've used natural materials, stone and timber, but they've also used cross-laminated timber in this design. So they're using off-site construction for this project as well. Also, another excellent visitor centre as a precedent study is Culloden Visitor Centre by Garth Hoskin Architects, and this is Culloden Battlefield, so it sits into its surrounding areas. If you have a look at some images online, you'll see that the building sits into the skyline because it's not intrusive on the site, because this is a historical site. So you've got to think about your site, designing within your site context, and also thinking about materials. So what sort of materials do you want to use within your design? So for your inspiration, I suggest that you look at visitor centres throughout Scotland, but you also look at off-site construction within Scotland. So a great starting point would be to Carbon Dynamic. How do they design their buildings, and how do their buildings fit into the surrounding areas? Once you've gathered all that information, you want to then start thinking about layout. So first of all, thinking about accessing your site, thinking about where your building is going to sit in your site, so thinking about orientation. Before you start thinking about rooms, the only thing you may want to think about is the access, and so therefore the entrance. Where is your entrance going to be? How are people going to access your building? Then you can then start thinking about layouts. And when you start to think about layouts and room orientation, the best way to do this for a visitor centre is think about the private and the public spaces. So private spaces being for staff and the public spaces being for the visitors. So how do you group these together? And you can even simply do that. It's a real simple exercise. It's just to cut out rough areas and move them around. Okay, so my entrance is going to be over here to the left. Okay, what needs to be beside the entrance? Is it the toilets? Is it a reception area? Is it the gift shop? And then that will start to form your design, but also using site analysis to do that. Once you've got a small arrangement, you want to make sure that you're complying with the brief. So always reflecting back to the brief and making sure you're meeting the brief, meeting the client's requirements, but also ensuring that your scale and your proportions are correct. So best books to look for are the metric handbook and the architect's pocketbook, and this will give you dimensional sizes that you can use. You want to think about toilets, so standard sizes for toilet facilities, and then this is when you start thinking about the building regulations. So making sure that you're complying with current building regulations. So making sure that someone can access the toilet, use the toilet without any obstructions in the way. And similarly for everything within that building. So the furniture, the dining tables, someone has plenty of space to sit down, eat their food, and then move. Kitchen layouts, so making sure that we have what's known as activity spaces and manoeuvring spaces. So this is when you start to get further down the line in your design, but you want to be able to consider that at an early stage, but making sure that you're keeping within the design parameters and the metre squareage. Okay, so these are extracts taken from the building regulations, which you should have look up yourself. Key points to consider in site analysis, inspiration, and then your design considerations, and including activity spaces. I hope that was a good introduction into site analysis and inspiration, and I look forward to meeting you in a few weeks. Bye.